tax returns. So yeah, here's what he said.
Look, as I've told you, they're under audit. They have been for a long time. They're extremely complex. People wouldn't understand them. They're done by among the biggest and best law firms in the country. Same thing with the accounting firms. The accountants are a very, very large, powerful firm from the standpoint of respect. They're highly respected. Big firm. A great law firm, you know it very well. They do these things. They put them in. But people don't understand tax returns. Now,
people don't understand them. Accountants, reporters, they can't understand them. Like, what do you think? His tax return is like written in Chinese? Like, that's not going to be that hard for anyone to understand. Like, if you've ever filed a tax return, like the numbers with Trump may be a little bit bigger, but you're able to understand tax. Like, that's so ridiculous. Like, I don't even know where to begin on that. Then things went off the rails, and he got in a fight with his best bud, Jimmy Acosta.
Thank you, Mr. President. I wanted to challenge you on one of the statements that you made in the tail end of the campaign in the midterms.
Here we go.
If you don't mind, Mr. President, that this caravan was an invasion. As you know, Mr. President,
I consider it to be an invasion.
As you know, Mr. President, the caravan was not an invasion. It's a group of migrants moving up from Central America towards the border with the U.S.
Thank you for telling me that. I appreciate it.
Why did you characterize it as such?
Because I consider it an invasion. You and I have a difference of opinion.
But do you think that you demonized immigrants in
not
this election
no, not
to
at
try
all.
to keep them?
I want them to come into the country, but they have to come in legally. You know, they have to come in, Jim, through a process. I want it to be a process, and I want people to come in, and we need the people.
Your campaign.
Wait. You know why we need the people, don't you? Because we have hundreds of companies moving in. We need the people.
But your campaign had an ad showing migrants climbing over walls and so on.
That's true. But they weren't actors.
They're not going to be doing that.
They weren't actors. Well, no, it's true. Do you think they were actors? They weren't actors. They didn't come from Hollywood. Right. These were people. Oh. This was an actual. It happened a few days ago. And
they're hundreds of miles away, though. They're hundreds and hundreds of miles away. That's not an invasion.
Honestly, I think you should let me run the country. You run CNN.
Right.
And if you did it well, your ratings would be much better.
If I may ask one other question, Mr. President, if I may ask one other question, are you worried?
That's enough. That's enough.
Mr. President,
that's enough.
I was going to ask one of the other folks.
That's enough.
Pardon me, ma'am. Mr. President,
that's enough.
Mr. President, I had one other question, if I may ask, on the Russia investigation. Are you concerned that you may have?
I'm not concerned about anything with the Russian investigation because it's a hoax. That's enough. Put down the mic.
Mr. President, are you worried about indictments coming down in this investigation?
So now he's literally pacing around the podium here.
I'll tell you what, CNN should be ashamed of itself having you working for them. You are a rude, terrible person. You shouldn't be working for CNN. Go ahead.
I think that's unfair.
You're a very rude person. The way you treat Sarah Huckabee is horrible. And the way you treat other people are horrible. You shouldn't treat people that way. Go ahead.
Wow.
Go ahead, Peter. Go ahead.
In Jim's defense, I've traveled with him and watched him. He's a diligent reporter who busts his butt.
Well, I'm not
like
a big fan of yours either, so
I understand.
To be honest.
So let me ask you a question if I can. You repeatedly said...
You are the best.
Mr. President, you repeatedly, over the course of...
Just sit down, please. Well, when you report fake news, when you report fake news, which CNN does a lot, you are the enemy of the people. Go ahead.
Mr. President, over the course...
All right, so that guy talking there was Peter Alexander, and he just from MNC, and boy, that was funny. Okay, like that's one of the most funny things to watch. Like, of course, then Trump goes and literally bars his press pass from covering the White House, which is pretty incredible. And quickly became clear that Trump, no matter how triumphant he had tried to sound at the beginning of the press conference, was rapidly losing control of himself in the briefing. He just pretty much spent the next 5 minutes yelling at reporters, demanding that they sit down and stop asking him questions he didn't like. He didn't answer those questions. He's like, "No, stop it! I am done with these." Like a Eastern European premier or something pretty crazy like that. After a brief bizarre interlude, and when he asked Vice President Mike Pence to rejoin him on the 2020 ticket. Trump then suggested he can then just end the Mueller investigation by just pretty much firing everyone right now. How great is that? He asked whether he could ratchet down the violent rhetoric toward the media. Trump insisted that he would want to see love, unity, peace. Unity, peace, and love. That's what we got to have. He also followed up by yelling at reporters for the past hour by claiming he'd be very good at having a low tone, which would be pretty crazy. Yeah, he asked he is asked if he would adopt a softer tone. He said, "I would not be very good at low tone, but when you when things are done not correctly about you, written about you, said about you on television or wherever it is, you have to defend yourself," he says. And I mean, I guess a lot of people would identify with that, but like, there's a lot of stuff that he said it's correct. It's almost all correct. And it's mostly stuff he doesn't like because he's an idiot. So yeah, before telling a Japanese reporter to say hi to Prime Minister Shinzo Abe, before telling the same reporter, "I don't really understand you." Responding to a question about the rising racism in the U.S., Trump bragged about moving the U.S. embassy from Israel from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. Trump insisted to PBS's Yamiche Alcindor, one of the few black women in the White House press corps, that asking him about calling himself a nationalist was a racist question, which is interesting. And then he denied using racist remarks by claiming that he didn't know who former Apprentice contestant Lil Jon was. I don't know who Lil Jon is. The point of fact is I've never used a racist remark. And then there's pictures, obviously, of Trump and Lil Jon standing like right next to each other. And by the way, he did do a lit Rock the Vote video in 2014, bro. It's really crazy. I just went back and looked at it yesterday. All right, yes, that's the crazy press conference. We're now going to move on to the House, and they have the House. Democrats do. Besides having not passing horrific bills for a change, what should they do? They should start holding hearings on voter suppression. Very important point, because if Republicans win elections, in part by systematically and purposely suppressing the votes of people likely to vote Democratic, Hamilton Nolan writes of Splinter, most often minorities. This is a fact that was amply demonstrated in the 2018 midterms from Georgia to Kansas. It's also a historic fact that helped to produce our current age of gerrymandered district and concerted right-wing effort to roll back the legal protections designed to ensure voting rights. All the way back to the U.S. Constitutional Convention. We talked about it in the first episode, Red Alert, like why these rights came into fruition, and I think it's very good that you go check that out. Political professionals all understand that this is fact and strategic use. A fair functioning democracy is not conducive to Republicans' electoral success, and that's why when we see time and time and again, when Democrats get more votes, when Democrats are brought, like when more votes go in for Democrats, more Republicans get elected. Like that's how it works. Like they've rigged the system starting all the way back in 2010 with this gerrymandering system, and then we have more votes. Like it's so gerrymandered, it's so messed up, and it really needs to end, obviously. But still, like there's not really too much we can do about it at this point in time until the 2020 census, which is really rough. And it's going to be very, very tough. But they can right now start to hold hearings on voting suppression. Like they can start to hold hearings on voting suppression. That's easily one of the first things they could and should do. Republicans, that's how they win elections, and we need to figure out how we can put an end to that, because it's not fair, it's not right, it's not democratic. People who are simple-minded enough to think that our electoral system's distribution of power should reflect the true will of the electorate may be upset to wake up today and see the Democrats have lost net 3 Senate seats, even though they received 9 million more votes in Senate races. Abolishing the Senate would be one of the best things we could do to promote democratic values, really. But then these sort of gaps between the popular vote and who ends up in office, President Trump, serve to focus the public mind on the fact that our system is rigged. Democrats can help this process along right now and do something for justice while they're at it. We need, again, campaign finance reform, we need to fix gerrymandering, and we need to fix this sort of bald, outright, muscular voter suppression that Republicans are now engaged in. Cries for a more immediate response. Like that needs to be ending now. Like we could have done much better than sort of blue wave election. That really wasn't a blue wave election, and that the reason why they can't. Really, I think the reason why a knockout punch wasn't delivered was not because a Democrat was or a Democrat ran too far to the left, too far to the right. I mean, maybe in some cases. I think in Andrew Gillum's case, you could speak to that amount. But the gerrymandering, and not just the gerrymandering, but the voter suppression. Gerrymandering and voter suppression, that is a fix that every single Democrat can come together and work to solve. And I think that should be very interesting. Like, put for a moment aside, at least for these next 2 years before the primaries begin, put aside the partisanship. You want to win elections. Hillary's side wants to win elections. You want to win elections out there, Hillary's side, like the centrist, moderate people. Like, you want to win elections, right? I mean, I hope so. Then, guess what? The Bernie Sanders left-wing side does too. So why can't we all come together and work to fix voter suppression, gerrymandering, all that campaign finance reform? Let's work on fixing the campaign so it can be back to the way it should be. Let's go back to democratic norms and values, and actually make a fair system. All right. We're going to move on now to the reaction to last night's electoral results. I mean, have been mostly along the lines of so much for that big blue wave we were promised, but at least the Democrats took back control of the House. The former isn't entirely wrong, though there are many bright spots at the state level, so the latter is cold comfort, and it's really its purest form. But the Democrats needed to take 218 seats at the House, where Nancy Pelosi will almost certainly be elevated as Speaker. As it currently stands, though, the party has 220 seats to the Republicans' 193, and they crossed that critical threshold by really a measly 2 seats. I think it's actually more than now. There are still races that haven't been called yet, but the Democrats' gains are right now at 20 seats. That's hardly even spitting distance from their forecasted gain, depending on who you listen to. Some could say in the neighborhood of 40 to 60, but they still did win. They eked across, and right now they just got 28 more seats, which is 233 to 197. Some still races are outstanding. For example, we could see, 6 more races go to the Democrats and 5 more to the Republicans, and that would put it a 229 to 202 is pretty much what it is. So yeah, only passing the threshold, only passing these 218 for control threshold by 4 seats now this time. So which is very, very rough stuff. Very, very tough situation there, that's for sure. But things get much darker when you look at the Senate. The dominion of Chuck Schumer. The Republicans were always expected to keep their majority, but Schumer's party managed to actually lose ground. Senator Claire McCaskill fell to Josh Hawley in Missouri. Joe Donnelly lost Indiana. Heidi Heitkamp was voted out in Texas. Voted out in North Dakota. We could have the Beto O'Rourke victory in Texas. We are pining for another 6 years of Ted Cruz forcing us, his college debate team captain, smarm on us all, so we were forced to celebrate the far too close wins by Joe Manchin and Bob Menendez of West Virginia and New Jersey, respectively. It's very, 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 very tough. That's very, very tough. In her victory speech last night of the DCCC, an organization so out of touch and self-indulgent, they were reportedly blasting Fight Song before the returns came in last night, and Pelosi had the gall to call the blue trickle a new day in America, a phrase which on Wednesday morning was the only true in its literal sense. Things is now proven there. Pelosi vowed to strive for bipartisanship, and then even where she hyped for the bipartisan marketplace of ideas. This is the next House Speaker's victory speech. I mean, this is rough. This is very, very worrying, and we need to see a little bit more aggression if we want any kind of hope for success, just any sort of success ever. Like, we need some more aggression for Nancy Pelosi. We need to change, or preferably, we don't need Nancy Pelosi. That's all I'm going to say. That's it for us. We are out here. No more need for Nancy Pelosi. It's Newsflash, everyone. We'll see you tomorrow. Peace.